Hey everybody, my name's John.
I'm Bob. He's Bi.
They're Butch.
And together we are the Butch and the Bi.
And you like watching things and enjoying things.
We like watching things and enjoying things.
And that's why this week we had a good time watching just a sad man struggle to be a dad.
We had a good time watching women who initially dislike each other becoming fast friends.
We had a good time watching a neighborhood come together to make fun of a Karen. A very racist Karen.
We had a good time watching ethical boundaries be bent.
Bent, yes. We had a good time watching Apple TV's Shrinking, which, boy, golly gee, is that one of the best shows of the year, I think. It is 10 episodes. And Bob, do you want to know what the show is about?
Yes, please.
Great.
I watched the whole thing and I still don't know.
I figured that was the case. That's what I expect. You let light pass your eyes and sound pass your ears, but it just doesn't stick. Nearing the 1-year anniversary of his late wife's passing, therapist Jimmy Laird, played by Jason Segel, starts using some ethically questionable and probably illegal practices to treat his patients. Shrinking is a beautiful exploration of grief and the family you choose. It is also one of the best written and well-performed shows of the year, and the creatives both behind the scenes and on the screen deserve fair compensation, residuals that reflect the streaming landscape, and protections from studios stealing their work and likeness. Anyways, just to make it very clear, this is the last episode we'll be doing focused on a project that has been made this year. This was completed before the SAG-AFTRA strike had started, and after, I believe, the Writers Guild of America strike had started as well. So just a heads up on that front. We stand in solidarity with the multiple creatives that deserve fair compensation and healthcare and not have to have their likeness stolen for AI purposes. The show is created by Bill Lawrence, who is responsible for Scrubs, Cougar Town, worked on Ted Lasso, and Clone High. Fun fact. I didn't realize that until I was doing the reading part. Jason Segel, who production-wise was a writer on Forgetting Sarah Marshall, The Muppets, Sex Tape, and Dispatches from Elsewhere. And Brett Goldstein, Catherine Tate's Nan, the Nan movie, Ted Lasso, and Soulmate. And yeah, Brett Goldstein is also Roy Kent. So that's fun.
He also has a podcast, Movies to Be Buried With.
He does. I've only listened to like one episode, which is a shame.
I have not listened. I just have a friend who's obsessed with him. So.
I mean, fair. Have you heard that man?
He's so good.
So good. The cast is comprised of Jason Segel as Jimmy Laird, Jessica Williams from Booksmart and Intergalactic. I didn't realize it, but she's the teacher in Booksmart. So the whole time I'm watching, I'm like, where do I know her from? That's it. As Gabby, his colleague and friend. Luke Tini as Sean, who was in Players and Deadly Class. Michael Urie as Brian. He was in Ugly Betty for like its entire run. Also a project called Partners. Lakita Maxwell from Generation. She's like, there's not much she's been in. And that's kind of the biggest thing, which is kind of what I went with here for a lot of these. As Alice, the daughter of Jimmy. Krista Miller, who is also the wife of Bill Lawrence, as Liz, and Harrison Ford from Cowboys and Aliens, Anchorman 2, and Expendables 3 as Dr. Paul Rhodes. Those are the things he's most well known for, Bob.
Mm-hmm. Those are his big hitters.
Oh, you betcha.
Yeah, he's only done, other than that, he's done a few little genre movies.
A couple indie films. Yeah, you know.
Some indie.
Some big hits. Who knows? Maybe someday they'll make some sequels or prequels. Or maybe they'll make 2 sequels that are the same story, but one's considered better because it's not as bad.
Yeah, that's
how the Indiana Jones movies went, right? But we here have a good time watching things.
Yeah.
I'm really excited because I didn't realize this till I was doing the thing. The theme song, Frightening Fishes, is created by Benjamin Gibbard, who is the lead vocalist and guitarist for Death Cab for Cutie, which is why that sounds like a Death Cab for Cutie song. And Tom Howe, who is the composer for Ted Lasso, I Am the Killer, I Am a Killer, and The Great British Baking Show, and numerous spinoffs. Like, Tom Howe is behind the music for like the kids version, like all these different versions of the Great British Baking Show, as well as the main series, and is the composer for this series. The show is edited by James Renfro, who worked on Blockbuster and Superstore, Katie Abel, who worked on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Don't Trust the Bee in Apartment 23, Missy Hernandez, who also worked on Blockbuster and Superstore, Peggy Takjin, Only Murders in the Building, Bad Girls Club, and worked on a lot of reality TV, like a lot of it, like Keeping Up with the Kardashians and like all those shows. And the cinematography is by James Frona, who worked on Transparent, I Love Dick, and Big Little Lies. So that's fun. And I just wanted to highlight too, because this show has some excellent guest stars and recurring guests, and we typically don't feature these from movies because the cast can get a bit unwieldy at times, but because this is a show, we're a little more justified to bring it up. We've got Ted McGinley as Derek, who's the husband of Liz. D-Man. Heidi Gardner is his blonde patient, Grace, who she's in like a bunch of comedies like in the last 10 years. Like she's amazing. Lily Rabe is Meg, who is Paul's daughter. She was in American Horror Story a lot, and she was great in this. One of my favorite performers is Wendy Malick, who plays Dr. Julie. She's in Owl House. She's the voice of the owl lady.
Oh, Ida.
Yeah, she's the doctor in this. I didn't realize you didn't realize her voice is very distinct.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes my brain does not make the connections.
Wow, I could have put that as a trivia question in there, and you might have gotten it wrong. Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. I just assumed you kind of picked up on it because I was like, oh, you're a big Owl House fan.
Yeah, I've been meaning to rewatch the whole thing.
Yeah, because you watched it as it was like coming out, right?
Yeah. Well, I watched. Yeah, as like the second season was coming out, I was watching it, and then waiting for the third season, and then watched that.
Yeah. And then last one that I want to mention is Neil Flynn, who was Paul's patient, the one that was like very like appreciative of Paul. He was the janitor on Scrubs. That was like his big, claim to fame.
The premise is very much like you've been a therapist for a while and you see your patients stuck in the same ways. And it is sort of addressing the thing about therapy, which is that it can be very useful for many things, but what is ultimately needed to heal is community. And it doesn't necessarily mean that therapists should become your friends. It means that you need to connect with people around you and build those relationships to actually heal from the things that are going on. And it needs to come hand in hand with therapy. And our society doesn't really want to do that, which...
It's getting notably better, but it's also notably harder because of the availability of professionals to seek help from. So that is one thing to consider is we're definitely in a significantly better place than we were even 5 years ago when it comes to mental health. I think a lot of that has to do with the pandemic forcing people that were forced to stay home and kind of deal with themselves a little bit. I think there was a lot of...
When so many of life's distractions were taken away, you are stuck looking at yourself and being like, oh no, I want to change some things.
Well, that, and also just like when so many of life's distractions go away, what you're left with is what you have experienced. And for a lot of people, they just go, and they're very much the I don't live in the past people. Meanwhile, it's like you really need to a little bit just revisit that chapter for a section. You
can't ignore it. You don't want to live there, but you got to acknowledge that it happened.
Yeah.
But anyways, this show. I feel like it's that understanding of community and building those relationships outside of professional spaces, and also just like addressing some of like inequities in life and loss. Like that's the big thing, is because being vulnerable and making connections means that you will experience loss. And that is such a basic human thing, and it really always is gonna suck, but it's what holds us together as a species also.
I think the thing that's interesting about the show is the way it approaches grief isn't just in the most common way we think of grief, which is, mourning the death of someone. which is what Jimmy and Alice are mostly going through, but also just the mourning of relationships or the mourning of your being able to do things your way. This show has Harrison Ford as the senior doctor in their practice, and he's dealing with Parkinson's. And you watch him throughout the season kind of accept and come to terms with the fact that he's not going to be able to do it on his own, but in a really kind of beautiful way, because it opens up the door for him to make amends with his daughter that he had abandoned at one point, and then also just like open the door for him to be a little more social. He was very much the I'm at work, therefore this is a work relationship kind of boundary. And it's kind of the parallel to Jimmy, who is, he's he's good friends with Gabby. They were both friends of his wife, and so they have that kind of pre-established relationship of a personal nature. But then with how he approaches his patients is very different from how Paul does. And kind of the point of the show is for both Paul and Jimmy to start leaning on the people they already have and not either ignore their problems or lean on people who it is inappropriate to lean on to. Yeah, it's
also just incredibly funny in so many ways. That's just because that's life. And there's like a moment where Alice is thinking about, she's like laughing and smiling with her friend, and then she feels that guilt because shouldn't I still be sad about my mom? And that's like the really hard thing about healing, is when you start to experience joy again and it gets mixed with guilt. Mm-hmm. And learning how to maneuver through that is a really interesting thing. That again, like, also the mourning is like mourning the person you were before you had to go through this. Mm-hmm. It's like, man, I used to not have this great sorrow that lived with me day to day. And that's a thing that doesn't get as addressed as much as just I miss my person who was gone.
Yeah. And it's hard for people to do that. I mean, that's kind of the point, is that Jimmy's deflecting the majority of the season onto helping his patients, which, like, there's, I'd say, two that he helps in a very unique way, and one that he helps in a way that's not good at all. So Sean is kind of the main patient of the season and ends up living with Jimmy and Alice by the end of the season, staying in they have a pool house because this is set in California, and beautiful properties, very rich people show. Liz's were common in Mount Lebanon. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Like, I was like, oh yes, but they developed this relationship because Sean's not willing to open up. He's being sent there because of probation, I believe.
He's gotten into some bar fights because
it's like an anger management thing.
Yeah, anger management from court order.
Yeah, and so he's being very non-communicative. He's not wanting to deal with it, and that's when Jimmy kind of like goes off the handle a little bit of like, no, let's go do something else, and like takes him to go boxing. And just, I don't know, their relationship as it develops is really great and really natural. And then you have his other patient who falls for him. The way that he helps her is by just being like, nope, I need to quit being your therapist because this is genuinely bad. And so that is a way of helping. By the way, spoilers.
Yeah, we're in spoilers now. There's also the guy who's like complains about all the superficial women that he dates, and then he reads and goes out like, hey, you're lying. Which is another thing about therapy, is like a therapist can only do so much if you're not honest. Mm-hmm. And also part of why sending like chronic abusers to therapy is really hard, because you get a biased opinion from your patients sometimes.
Yeah, it's also a bit frustrating because, like, man, I don't know. Doctors tell you like what's wrong with you, like, oh, you've got a brain tumor or you've got X, Y, or Z, and if you do this, it'll go away. And there's so much. I get it in the first like year or two of therapy, right? I've been in therapy for 2018.
5 years.
Yeah, 5 years. And like, it's gotten to a point a little bit where like I appreciate everything that my therapist has done for me. I appreciate the progress that I have made, but like, to a degree, I'm like, I need you to just tell me at this point. Mm-hmm. I need to be just told, because I'm not I'm not going to think my way out of this one. I know what I'm feeling. And that it's that thing of like watching Jimmy, who is a therapist, who knows X, Y, and Z about the thing that he's going through, and yet he's still not dealing with it, is just, and then watching the community form around him is really nice. It's just it's kind of in that Ted Lasso vein, which definitely like Brett Goldstein and Bill Lawrence, it is seeping up through the cracks very clearly of like, oh yeah, this has that Ted Lasso charm to it, this Ted Lasso aesthetic to it.
Yeah, because Jimmy is aware, like the whole thing with Sean is like, Jimmy's like, oh, you're getting kicked out of your house. I know you aren't going to be able to actually grow and take care of yourself without housing. Like that's a basic thing. Like we send people to therapy. It's not going to help if they're homeless. You have to take care of basic needs first. And him taking that on, I feel like sort of affects the people around him. They're like, oh, he really, like they're seeing how much he cares, and like him taking that as a thing that he needs to do, partially because he's a little bit, he's at fault in a way.
I really enjoyed the show.
Yes.
I genuinely think one of the best shows of the year, one of the best pilot seasons, and I really recommend it. I think it's just a really beautiful show. It's also one of those shows that after you get like an episode or two in, you kind of just want to binge the whole thing. I noticed that happened with you, where you were kind of stuck on like, not stuck, but you got through like episode 2, I think, and you were kind of at a standstill for a little bit. I'm like, hey, did you keep watching? And then like the next day you were like, oh, I finished. And I was like, yeah, that's how it went for me. I had like in a day I watched like 1 and 2 and I was like, okay, this is pretty good. And then started watching. I was like, this is really good. It's a really beautiful show. I would recommend watching it. But Bob, I want to move into talking about some of our favorite parts, the things that really stood out to us. What stood out to you? Like, what were some of your favorite moments?
Man, I mean, there are so many good moments with Paul, and Harrison Ford is just so good in this. He is the perfect deadpan curmudgeon. It is truly always a joy to watch, even when it's making you very sad. It's like, wow, you're doing such a good job.
He reminded me so much of my grandfather. It was, the whole time like, oh man, this is wild. He looks like him too.
Oh, there's so many just hilarious moments, and I meant to be taking notes, but I was also just absorbed by the show. Yeah,
my note for this was like pretty much every conversation with Paul. Like Paul is such a great foil to all of these characters, and then he's faced with Gabby, who is amazing in this show. And turns out she improvised a lot of her lines and stuff. They were very clear with her of like, hey, we're 3 white men writing this show. We need your voice to come through. What do you think the character would say? Like all this stuff. So she like improvised a lot of like the funny little reactions and like one-liners that she cracks out. Sense. Just very good. Okay.
Oh, just like things that stick out in my mind, even if it's not like the funniest thing, is still just Jimmy jumping on the trampoline and coming up over the fence and staring at the guy who he knows had sex with his daughter. Like, it's just so absurd.
Yeah. Liz and Sean bonding over the course of the season is a very fun dichotomy, because upper class rich white woman and this black kid that's dealing with a lot of shit, and by the end of the season they're like working on their business, and like they have this really nice moment where like a subplot of the season is that Liz and Derek, they love each other, but very much in like, we need limited qualities of each other kind of thing, and he's retiring.
Quantities.
No, limited quantities. And he's retiring, so he's like, I need space in my house. I've worked my whole life for this moment. Go find a hobby, please. And so she's trying to figure it out. But it's just this like really great little relationship that happens in kind of the background of the show. And then the everybody hates Karen scene. That's one of the first scenes I saw on like TikTok of this show, was that scene. And it's just such a good like, yes, that's exactly how people like that should be responded to. It's just like, oh, hey, you dipshit, you neighborhood fool.
I'm going to step on your white flowers.
Yeah.
The dogs that she is fostering.
Little shit eater. What was his name?
Oh, tampon eater's the bigger one. And then there's shit rat, I think.
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah. I love Liz and Derek's relationship. It's especially when he's leaving and he's saying, you're snoring, and she's like, no, I knew you were snoring. And then as Jimmy comes up, he's like, how was your day? And he's like, perfect. My wife has no faults. And it's just,
yeah.
but like, it's that sort of like playful animosity that actually doesn't feel like, oh, you actually hate each other. Like so many straight relationships you see portrayed.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you're actually like comfortable with each other. And
he's the better version of the sitcom dad. He's got the dad from Stranger Things energy, but like better.
yeah.
Yeah, like he's definitely classic, like, I don't know what's going on and I don't really want to know what's going on kind of like mood about him, but he's always there with like a really good quip about the situation.
Yeah, he's just very positive and it's always good energy. And Gabby calling him D-Man and that just becoming a thing.
Yeah.
And the cornhole tournament.
Also, I'm not a shipper of many things, but I was Jimmy and Gabby. I was like, yeah, I could see this. And they do it. And I'm so happy for them. They're a beautiful, beautiful couple. And I hope that season 2 isn't just them undoing that. Because I feel like that's the way it goes with a lot of those types of things. And the show spent a lot of time subverting expectations about a lot of things. So it'd be like they show her having some like doubt towards the end of the season. But I'm really hoping that's so they can subvert that and they just end up being happy. Of course, who knows when we'll get that because things.
Season ends with the first patient that he goes AWOL with and tells her to leave her husband, and she doesn't quite. After he takes her back as a patient, she starts to realize what an awful husband she has. And a lot of this season is people having conversations as they're walking up a trail that I assume is like...
It's a hiking trail in LA that's like relatively famous.
Yeah, so they're on it a lot. And this couple is climbing up and she's like, I'm done. And he just is a horrible, abusive douchebag. And she said earlier in the episode, it was a great Chekhov's cliff push. And she did it. She pushed him off the cliff. And
it's like during the wedding.
Yeah, it's cutting back and forth the wedding, which is it's so sweet.
It's also really nice that like so Ted Lasso had 2 prominent queer characters that really didn't get any sort of spotlight till season 3, and any sort of like exploring that too heavily. It was a lot of subtext. This show has a very prominent queer character,
Jimmy's best friend Brian,
his best friend Brian.
His best friend Brian. Everything goes his way,
and it's such a like. He's this chipper, like Jimmy kind of ghosts him after his wife dies. And it really like, that was another thing that was extremely relatable, was like that feeling of like, why is this person not interacting with me or talking to me or explaining why they're not talking to me? Again, there's just a lot of really good things about this show.
Yeah, there's a lot that's like, you will see things that you relate to and it is rewarding, and you will see things that explain emotions that you have been confused by. Like, yeah, it's just really good. And Brian is a fantastic character and very fun. But yes, this season ends with the homicide and no remorse for the killer, which, like, good for her, but also you can't.
But the season 2 is going to be a court case for sure.
Yeah.
So as far as recommendations go, a couple make a little too much sense. Ted Lasso, obviously. If you enjoy the humor in this show, if you enjoy the tone of the show, the kind of wholesome sarcasm that's in this show, you'll love Ted Lasso. Only Murders in the Building, again, same kind of thing of like, it's this group of 3, Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Selena Gomez, that are solving murders as a podcast. It's a really fun show. Again, similar kind of like almost surreal realism kind of vibes. Like, it's like there's a lot of slice of life moments in all of these shows that really stands out. This Is Where I Leave You is a 2014 film starring Jason Bateman. Jane Fonda's in it. They're sitting Shiva for I think it's their mother or something. Really, really beautiful film, but that is kind of exploring the humor of death and grief. And Frasier is on here. The original 1993 to 2004 series, and not the spin-off that's coming out that's going to be god-awful.
Truly, because, whatever the heck that is.
Kelsey Grammer has just gone off he's gone off the Roseanne Barr deep end, but just hasn't gotten as big of a microphone because he hasn't been in anything really since X-Men. I think he briefly appears in Days of Future Past, and that's it. But yeah, those are my recommendations. Bob, do you have any recommendations for the show, or like for?
Yeah, I actually kind of have this like in my mind a double feature, which is The Truman Show and Stranger Than Fiction.
Yeah,
which are both
really
like a character who has done a lot of comedic work taking a more serious turn, and questions of like a narrator of life.
Yeah.
I really love this as a double feature. Have you seen Stranger Than Fiction?
I've not seen Stranger Than
Yeah,
Fiction,
I
but
wanna
Truman
make you
Show
watch
is one of
it.
my favorite.
Yeah, no, it's Will Ferrell doing an amazing job. But
Is that the one where there's an author? Who's the
Yeah.
author in that?
that is
Oh, she's in a lot of stuff.
she is.
You know what? I've seen bits and pieces of that movie,
Mhm.
but I've not seen the full thing through. So yeah, we'll have to watch it.
Yeah, it's things that are serious but are treated with they're treated with genuine empathy for the characters,
Mhm.
and I think that they both kind of fill in that same energy that this show does.
Absolutely. Yeah. Bob, are you ready for your favorite
Oh
part?
boy, what is on the table this time? What are my stakes?
You will. We're gonna lock up your studio.
You're gonna lock me out of my studio
Just lock you out of it.
if I don't get at least
If
3
you don't
of-
get at least 3 right, lock you out of your studio.
Oh boy, that's a wild choice considering that's where I make money that I need to.
Well, you make money other places now. Yeah. Ready?
Yep.
Okay. Question number 1.
Mhm.
Paul was intended to be played by a Harrison Ford-like actor until Harrison Ford, at the surprise of the showrunners, said yes. What convinced him to join the project? A really great script. B, an on-screen romance with John's favorite older actress. C, Jason Segel's full frontal in Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Or D, they have no clue.
Oh my god, I want to say D.
That would be correct. They literally, they didn't expect him to say yes. They explained the premise. They did not have a script for him at all yet. But funnily enough, he did do, I think it was either Conan or Kimmel. Harrison Ford was on it, and he was talking about how he went back and watched Forgetting Sarah Marshall to kind of get familiar with Jason Segel's work. And there is a full frontal noodle scene that he
Full
said.
frontal noodle?
Yeah,
You said noodle.
noodle. It's his noodle. Yeah.
Full frontal noodle.
But he says nice penis
hmm
about Jason Segel's dick.
Yeah, that was the thing when you asked me this question. I was like, I remember Harrison. I remember that someone was talking about Jason Segel's dick.
It was Harrison Ford.
I
Maybe
love
that
him.
was the thing that played into it. I like to
But
assume
from the creator's standpoint, they don't.
no clue. They
Yeah.
never got an explanation as far as we know. Question 2.
Mhm.
How many shows produced by Bill Lawrence has Krista Miller, who plays Liz in this, been in? A, 1, B, 2, C, 3, D, 4.
C3?
That is incorrect. She has been in 4.
Oh.
All 4 specifically. She has been in Shrinking, Scrubs, Clone High, and Cougar Town. Yeah. They got married in the late 90s. So
I love people who give their partners work. It's just such a fun thing. Like, yeah, I want to put you in this project. Okay, cool.
yeah. Question number 3. Before the infamous final season of NBC's hit Scrubs, Neil Flynn landed a role being the lead on this long-running ABC sitcom. A, The Middle. B, The Goldbergs. C, Cougar Town. D, Parks and Recreation.
Goldbergs?
No, he was the lead in The Middle. He was the dad.
Mm.
So it came on the air in 2009. Scrubs' final season was 2010, so he was double duty that year.
Mm.
Question number 4. Oh, by the way, you need to get these next 2
Yeah,
questions
I
right.
know.
Yeah. Question number 4. Several of the characters have a featured hobby, but one of them is the actor's actual hobby as well. A, Liz, rock tumbling. B, Alice, soccer. C, Brian, cornhole. Or D, Sean, fighting.
Rock tumbling just feels so specific.
Does it feel specific?
Yeah.
That's because it is. It's the correct answer.
Yeah, I was just like, also that being his wife, it is a little bit of you have your little rock tumbling setup in our home, and it's going to be part of your character because I find it amusing.
Yep.
And it is also such a good part of her character. She gives her very special rocks to her favorite people. And
There's that very lovely moment where Gabby gets one and
Yeah.
she's like, oh my God.
and then she's immediately like, why didn't you tell me that you had sex with Jimmy? It's,
Okay, so you got that one. Okay, question number 5. Final question. Final chance. Series cinematographer Jim Frona grew up in this Wisconsin town. A, Point Place. B, Madison. C, Menominee. D, Greendale.
I love the thought of you being like, ooh, this guy is from Wisconsin. Let me go look up some places in Wisconsin.
I told you it was a struggle to find some
Yeah,
trivia.
you did. Point Place.
Oh my God, Bob, you're from Wisconsin. Okay, so no, that's incorrect. I'm locking down your studio.
No,
First off, the
I
correct answer is Greendale.
Okay, that was my that was my first gut.
Because Point Place isn't a real place. It's the fictional town that 70s show takes place in.
Amazing. I haven't been everywhere in Wisconsin. There's some weird names out there.
Yeah, but like...
I don't know. I didn't know that much about that 70s show. I didn't know that.
Wild. Okay, well...
Okay. Well, can I go kiss my sewing machine goodbye?
No. Mm-mm.
I'll miss you forever.
Wow, I've never even gotten that. Bob, do you have any final thoughts?
I feel like my final thought was rock tumbling and the significance of rocks.
Fair. That's a good final thought.
Also just the joke about white guilt catering.
Yeah. Well, Bob, where can the people that listen to this show find you if they don't know?
They can find me at asmallfrogart.com. Art by frog, for frogs, others welcome, as well as on Instagram and Patreon.
Hell yeah. And you can go to www.thebutchandtheby.com. That's A&D, not ampersand, because the internet does not like ampersands. And you can go subscribe to our YouTube channel. It'd be a big help.
Yeah.
Yeah. Me, see?
A pretty nice little podcatcher you got here. Shame if you didn't listen to more of us.
God, okay. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Butch.